Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've stacked up your sources, articles, scholarly reviews, all kinds of modern business applications, and today we are really digging into the strategic core of one single monumental text, Sun Tzu's The Art of War.
And this is so much more than just a historical artifact. It's really a set of timeless mental models. They've guided leaders, entrepreneurs, negotiators for over 2.5 millennia.
So our mission for you today is pretty simple.
Yeah, we are distilling these universal laws of power, preparation, psychological mastery, and timing so you can walk away with a kind of strategic shortcut.
Okay, let's unpack this now. The core of all this material. It seems to frame the text not as a manual for fighting, but really as a blueprint for superior strategic thinking.
It is.
So if you're preparing for high-stakes situations,
Yeah.
whether that's a critical business decision, a tough negotiation, or just navigating a competitive environment, this is the guide you need.
It absolutely is. And we have to start with the central paradox here, because if you miss this, you basically miss the entire point of this deep dive.
Which is?
The book is called The Art of War, right? But its central theme is actually avoidance.
You're saying the entire point of mastering conflict is to make conflict unnecessary.
Precisely. That is Sun Tzu's most radical idea. The greatest victory is winning without fighting.
Oh.
Think about it. Conflict, it doesn't matter what domain, military, business, political, it's fundamentally expensive. It just burns through resources, time, reputation, emotional capital.
So the master strategist is the one who orchestrates outcomes so far ahead of time that the actual confrontation it never even happens.
Exactly. So what we're looking at is a text that pushes 4 major oppositions.
Right. Strategy over raw force.
Intelligence over blind emotion.
Thorough preparation over just, frantic reaction.
And discipline over chaos. It's all about controlling the conditions for success long before you're even on the field, which is why the first foundational pillar we need to talk about isn't about the enemy at all.
It's about yourself.
Yeah.
Internal mastery. Okay. Starting with what I think is probably the most comforting concept for anyone facing risk, this idea of a preemptive victory.
This is principle 4. Victory is decided long before the battle even begins. Sun Tzu believed the moment of execution. That's just the harvest of decisions you made during planning.
So you don't improvise your way to victory.
No,
Well,
you execute a superior design.
that distinction is so critical. If we look at it in a modern context, like, say, major product launch or a merger, the people who win have already run 10 different scenarios. They've war-gamed the competitor's response. They have contingencies for the supply chain failing. The people who lose, they just prepared for the best case, and now they're panicking at the first roadblock.
Preparation is really the act of shrinking the universe of variables you have to manage in the moment. It's risk mitigation through, exhaustive forethought.
And the person who can pull that off has to have incredible internal control.
Yes, which moves us right into the psychological side. Principle 6. Leadership requires calm and discipline. We see leaders confuse passion with effectiveness all the time, but Sun Tzu seems to argue they're often enemies.
Oh, absolutely. The sources we looked at really emphasize that anger and ego are strategic liabilities.
Total liabilities, they blind your judgment. They create predictable patterns of behavior that any intelligent opponent can just instantly exploit. If you are easily provoked.
You're easily defeated. Wait, before we move on, I want to challenge that just a little bit.
Okay.
Sun Tzu also emphasizes speed and opportunity. Isn't there a risk that too much calm could lead to, paralysis? How do you balance that patience needed for deep preparation with the need for decisive action?
That's a fantastic question, and it really speaks to the nuance in the text. See, discipline isn't about being passive, it's about being objective. You can move with blinding speed if that decision is rooted in a rational assessment, not an emotional impulse. Ego, on the other hand, it makes you discount contradictory data, and that is exactly the weakness a rival negotiator or competitor is looking for.
So the book sounds like this calm, precise mentor, because it's reminding you that strategic clarity requires emotional distance.
A disciplined mind maintains the space to see reality clearly. An emotional mind, it only sees its own reflection.
So once we have that internal foundation, calmness and preparation, then we can turn our focus outward to the strategic landscape.
Which brings us to section 2, and probably the most essential strategic duality in the whole book. We have to start with principle 1. Know yourself and know the enemy.
Right, the famous quote, everybody knows it. But what's the deeper strategic implication that we might be missing here?
The deep insight is that this knowledge is quantifiable. The text guarantees it. If you know yourself and your opponent, you don't need to fear the result of 100 battles.
But if you're ignorant of either side of that equation,
Defeat is highly likely. Ignorance is the primary reason for failure.
in modern business, knowing yourself, that means understanding your real constraints, right? Your capital, supply chain bottlenecks, company culture, core competencies.
Exactly. And knowing the enemy isn't just knowing company X, it's understanding the terrain, the regulatory environment, market liquidity, demographic shifts, the technology.
The terrain is everything. So if you
Yes.
know the environment is heavily regulated and your competitor specializes in, I don't know, regulatory capture, that knowledge is way more powerful than any raw product advantage you have.
It is. It's about intelligence being the ultimate resource. It beats raw effort or brute strength every single time.
And if knowledge is the foundation of reality, then perception. Well, that's where things get really dynamic.
Which brings us to principle 2. All warfare is based on deception.
This is where strategy becomes an art form.
It really is. And it's not just about lying. It's about managing perception to control the behavior of your opponent. The core insight is appear strong when you are weak and appear weak when you are strong.
That is so potent, especially in negotiations. If you genuinely have strong leverage, appearing weak or maybe a little hesitant, that can lure the other party into overextending themselves, revealing their bottom line.
Right, because if they think you're desperate, they drop their guard.
Exactly.
The goal is to maximize your strategic space. I mean, think about the modern stealth mode startup.
Yeah.
They appear weak. They don't market, they don't engage with anyone, but secretly they're building this massive technological or logistical advantage. They control the narrative, they let everyone else underestimate them, and that's often their decisive advantage when they finally reveal their strength.
So it's about controlling information and letting other people use their own flawed assumptions against themselves.
Yes, it keeps opponents off balance, reactive instead of strategic.
It applies everywhere. Business, career strategy, even just personal boundaries. By not broadcasting every single goal you have, don't show your hand too early.
That's the key.
Okay, so now we shift. We've got internal discipline, we've got external knowledge. Now we're looking at the dynamic focus of execution, timing, and adaptability.
Because it's not enough to have a perfect plan. You have to deploy it at the perfect moment.
Right.
And this is principle 3. Speed, timing, and opportunity are decisive. Sun Tzu gives these stern warnings against prolonged battles, which in modern terms means, delayed decisions, projects that drag on forever.
Why is that?
Because delay destroys advantage. The cost of just sitting there, of inertia, is often greater than the cost of a slightly imperfect early move.
Oh yeah, waiting for the absolutely perfect moment usually means the window has just slammed shut.
Exactly.
I mean, if you're competing in a fast-moving market, an early 80% solution that captures the critical market share, that will always beat a 100% solution that launches 6 months too late.
The key insight is seizing opportunities quickly. Hesitation lets competitors solidify their position, it erodes your leverage, or worse, it lets them find their own counter strategy.
So perfect timing beats perfect power. You act early, efficiently, decisively.
And once you've acted, the environment immediately starts to change.
Which leads us directly to principle 7. Adaptability is the ultimate advantage. Rigid strategies, no matter how brilliant they looked on paper, they are just doomed to fail.
This is where the text uses some of its most beautiful imagery. Sun Tzu famously says that strategy must be like water.
Right.
Water shakes itself to the ground, it flows over. If the terrain changes, the water adapts its shape instantly. It doesn't try to force the landscape to bend to its original path.
That lesson is so clear. Flexibility beats stubbornness. We've seen entire corporations. I'm thinking of companies that rigidly clung to physical retail or internal combustion engines when the market shifted. They paid the ultimate price.
Because the environment dictates the shape of the strategy, not the planner's ego. The highest form of intelligence is being willing to abandon a failing plan quickly when you get new data.
And that profound adaptability, that willingness to constantly reevaluate and shift, that's essential to achieving the core goal we started with.
Exactly.
Which circles us all the way back to principle 5, revisiting the highest strategy of all, avoidance. You said this is one of the most misunderstood ideas.
It really is. People focus on the conflict, not the preemption.
Mm-hmm.
But the highest form of strategy is specifically defined as to break the enemy's resistance without fighting.
This is where Sun Tzu becomes a guide for strategic mergers, regulatory leverage.
Or competitive standard setting, yeah. You don't defeat them with tanks, you defeat them by making their continued existence in that market financially unsustainable or logistically impossible.
Okay, give us a concrete modern example of this, winning without fighting.
Well, consider a dominant player in an industry. They might set a new, expensive safety or compliance standard. They can easily absorb that cost. But it drives their smaller, less capitalized competitors right out of business.
So they haven't fought a price war. They've just changed the rules of the terrain to their own benefit.
Precisely. Or they buy the only key supplier for a critical component. They've essentially ended the fight before the opposition can even mobilize. You leverage pressure and timing so effectively that the opposition just yields.
The ultimate lesson here for you, for the listener, is about strategic resource allocation. Choose your battles carefully.
Yes.
Not every conflict, not every argument, not every competitive skirmish deserves your finite energy. Strategic non-engagement is often the smartest long-term move.
It preserves your resources for the truly decisive moments. And when we synthesize all this wisdom, we can see why it's been essential for 2,500 years. It builds strategic patience. It encourages calm, rational thinking. It's really a mental operating system upgrade.
But, no source is perfect. As we dug through the critiques, what are the key limitations our listeners should be aware of?
The major criticism is twofold. First, the language, especially in some translations, can be very abstract. It relies heavily on metaphor.
So it requires real reflection to apply it outside of the military.
It does. And second, the sources point out that this is purely strategic wisdom. It's not a motivational pep talk. It gives you the what and the why, but you have to fill in the modern step-by-step tactical how. It's a framework, not a blueprint.
So it's not going to tell you exactly which button to push on Monday morning.
No.
But it will make sure you understand the entire decision architecture before you even approach the console. It really is a handbook for rational decision-making under pressure.
Which is why it's so valuable for leaders, managers, negotiators, anyone dealing with complexity.
So here's where it gets really interesting, tying all these threads together.
Yeah.
Preparation, deception, timing. The overall conclusion seems undeniable.
It is. The art of war is not about fighting harder. It's about thinking smarter. It trains you to control your internal state, anticipate outcomes, and win decisively through superior intelligence, not just brute effort.
Okay, so based on the source material we analyzed, the verdict is clear.
Yeah.
This is still essential reading for anyone seeking mastery in high-stakes fields. We're giving it a 9.5 out of 10.
I think that's fair.
And the core takeaway that really encapsulates this entire deep dive is this. Strategy decides outcomes long before action begins.
That's the critical piece of knowledge to carry forward. And if you want a final provocative thought to explore on your own,
Let's hear it.
considering the principle that all strategy is based on deception, how might actively letting a key competitor or rival underestimate your adaptability, leading them to cling rigidly to their own assumptions, how might that become the single most decisive move in your next strategic challenge?